My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be Shakespeare and Cleopatra, Video 25, the first chapter. This is my novel, Shakespeare and Cleopatra, My Life is Not My Own. Cleopatra's dead, hovering between life and the afterlife. By some strange process, she becomes aware that a playwright is writing her story. Who is this Shakespeare? What does he know about her? What kind of Cleopatra does he intend to create? He seems to be unaware of her presence, but perhaps if she talks to him as he writes, she can exercise some control over the story of a life that she fears is no longer her own. Now, as she talks to him, he's writing a play. She will come to know his name after a chapter or two, but that's all. She won't know what kind of playwright he is. She won't know the William Shakespeare we know. And the play that he's writing is Antony and Cleopatra. But as far as she knows, he could be writing a silly farce, something really savage and cruel that would make fun of her. So she was quite worried. This novel, Shakespeare and Cleopatra, My Life is Not My Own, has two main characters. Cleopatra, who is speaking to the writer Shakespeare as he writes his play, and Shakespeare, who does not speak, nor does he indicate that he's aware of her presence as he's writing. So despite the fact that Shakespeare is a major character in this novel, every word of the printed text of the novel is an image in the mind of the character Cleopatra. Usually in my video presentations, I isolate a single image layer in the mind of the main character, one image arc for each video presentation. But for this reading, I'm going to read all of chapter 1 of Cleopatra's Thought in the order in which the images are printed in the book. After I read chapter 1, I'll talk about the theory behind this method of novel presentation. So, these are all layers of imagery in the mind of Cleopatra. This is chapter 1 of her thought, and all she's getting is bits and pieces of each of these image topics in chapter 1. And she'll get more in chapter 2 and chapter 3 and so on. So in reading it, it all seems rather nonsensical. But if you read the whole novel and put all the little items together, it makes perfect sense. And that's the point I'm going to make. Chapter 1, Cleopatra's Thoughts. I am Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. I must cling to what I know myself to be. I could barely see my fingers through this mist. Who's there? Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold thyself. And who, pray tell, are you? All I can see are your eyes. Do you know who you are? Two creatures dwelled on opposite sides of a sphere. A glowing candle, a ratty pen, a dish of ink, a basket of almost nothings beside a door, an alchemist digging down for gold. So, have you come back from the dead? Have you begun your afterlife? Or is there a membrane that you haven't yet broken through? The empire of Alexander the Great, Egypt in the time of the Ptolemies, a dynasty based on Alexander's heirs. The mist is gradually clearing. Now my fingers, now my hands, gradually my arms come into view. You cannot hear me, can you? You don't bat an eye as I speak to you. Perhaps if I use my commands, my servant's voice. He has given up his empire to a whore. Oh, you're so lucky to be a princess, my nurse is telling me. Such a rich mixture of blood flows through your veins. You're a child of the best of the humans. You are a child of the best of the gods. Alexander and Isis were present at your birth. I have no mother, and my father has left me again. Isis is a girl who was a goddess. Cleopatra, her dangerous beauty heightened by cosmetics, not satisfied with the power she had, was decked out in the spoils of the Red Sea. Her alabaster breasts shone through the fine Sidonian cloth, tightly woven by the Oriental shuttle, then loosened by the Egyptian needle that relaxes the taut threads. Perhaps there's a flaw in the cosmos. A part of the legend, a note of permission, petition the gods, seemingly random letters, the only man I know, asked the question, shown a vision, what army to move, see more and deeper, a mind which problem solves. A noisy mob spilling out of a dingy building, each greasy peasant clutching a coin in the hand. Who are these people and why am I forced to watch? What drab clothing, what pasty faces, what a repugnant apparition, like looking at life through dirty glass. For this, I've been brought back from my monument? For this, I've been brought back from the grave? What is the force that is making me watch this mysterious scene? A mirage will try to keep its secrets. So, there's more than just the eyes. Now I can see your nose and your mouth, and that little scruffy beard that clings to your chin. What from the Cape can you discern at sea? You cannot see me, can you? Though I am ocular to myself, as plain as day. You can't see me, though I stand in front of you. Arsinoe was a girl who was immortal. Emerging from the mist again, where, I wonder, will I finally reside? Perhaps something slipped and caused a jar. Was always dry, depicted in a mural, don't believe every word we see in art, thinking of other things, the primal seed that swims, all these are present, gone to oblivion, all the same to you, not in this scene. These streets are dark and narrow, too narrow for the sun to penetrate. When I look up, there's hardly any sun in the sky. And the buildings are narrow and tall and wooden. Where's the marble? Where are the avenues? Where's the sky? And why am I forced to watch as this mob makes its ragtag way? I am borne along in their current. I am swept along the streets, not inside the mob as one of the walkers. I'm outside, as if watching a dull and boring play. Venom is strictly for defense, said the mother snake. You sit at a table in a candlelit room. I stand and you sit, though I was once a queen. I was always at my best in the candle's glow. What a bland and base existence. You sit and scribble with your pen. Once in a while, you pause and dip your feather in the ink. She makes hungry where most she satisfies. Not for you, a foreign prince, my dear, my father is telling me. You must keep to your room tonight. You will grow up to marry this kingdom. You will rule at your brother's side. I am negotiating your future. I am strengthening the ties that secure our throne. Blocks of granite lashed by waves, a flower which doesn't need a seed, a row of teeth concealed below the water. Follow the bubble where it leads you. Follow the bubble wherever you can. Follow the bubble, but do not seize it. It will burst and leave no footprints. Just a wink and it will be gone. The denied boy was in limbo. He dwelt in the land of every day. He felt himself to be an exile, far from his rightful place. Do you feel yourself to be in a sort of limbo? Poised somewhere between life and the afterlife? Is there a sense of unfinished business that you feel you must pursue? The Pharaoh decided to build a tomb. He wanted it to last. to withstand the stinging sandstorms of the centuries, to outlast the brutal pillages of time. No one knows what to make of Cleopatra. He will be the water that shapes the driftwood. He will be the wind that shapes the sand. He will be the brush that mixes the paints and colors the mural. I, the wood, I, the sand, I, the wall. An empire divided into kingdoms, assassination as an aid to the will of the heavens, a body buried in sacred soil. Good stories are spontaneous. They don't need seeds. Though if there is a seed, a story's all that easier to believe, though the seed be never planted in the ground. A good story can water itself. It invents and nurtures its own bloom, and it easily chokes out nature's paltry affair. Know that I am Cleopatra. What I was is what I am. Through these mists and these fleeting glimpses, I have been me. No one has ever bled my essence from my veins. What country, friends, is this? Do you think that I don't know what you are? Do you suppose that I have no inkling of your game? I've already seen 2 or 3 others of the ink-stained trade. Cassandra was a girl who was immortal. Anthony is a battered old tomcat, scarred, bruised, raucous, and drunken. Anthony is a great spirit, nevertheless. Perhaps the universe is wobbling on its axis. Locking eyes with him, broken gilded fingernails, how the mind works, leave no footprints. Scenes of action, result will be the same. Step down from the pedestal, change of his fortune, the rules must be obeyed. Did you think of yourself? Once in a while, the crowd stops and chatters. Others come and join them from other streets. One pretends that he wields a sword, stabs another one under the armpit. He staggers around and speaks words that are foreign to my ears. Another climbs up on a slop heap. Her petticoats are ragged and torn. She raises her arms and cries out to the heavens. When she finishes caterwauling, there's a loud and raucous burst of ear-splitting applause. She slides back down the slop heap and joins the throng. Another one kneels in the mud. His knees are ragged and torn. Another pretends to stab him in the back as he kneels. She was surrounded by a troop of soldiers. Ever felt the bite of the asp? Ever felt the slice of the knife? Ever taken a final nod in your easy chair? Then you must still be alive. You must still be plying your trade. You are an inmate in that prison I left behind. Age cannot wither her, nor custom stale her infinite variety. Standing next to my father's sarcophagus, wiping genuine tears from my eyes, my brother stands in a circle of advisors, holding a napkin in front of his face. Every time I turn from my father, the others are looking me up and down. I stand alone. I think alone. I cease to cry. Helen seems to have been a girl who was born of mixed parentage. In the presence of an ink-stained playwright, assigned, I assume, to dictate my thoughts to this scruffy scribe. Perhaps an effort could be made to repair this flaw. World was his footstool, test divine, written somewhere, be so naive, recommended this delicacy, dancing for a kingdom, tasted like desert sand. You move them around, the king says no, to leave my footprints. More and more, the mob is swelling. More and more, these pasty-faced dullards swells the throng. We pass out of the narrow streets to a riverside. What does all of this mean to me? Why this gaggle of ragtag peasants? An apparition without any meaning. Should I not be shown a vision of kings and queens? The rabble moves onto a bridge. Narrow shops loom and lean on either side. The stench of food, the squawks of the sellers. How can people live like this? I am forced to follow the mob. Nothing so far has had any significance. I hear the river rushing beneath us. What meaningless vision will I be shown on the other side? I have a disturbing question, said the supplicant. You are a playwright, a miserable playwright. You make a living injecting ink into dead people's veins. We are such stuff as dreams are made on. You are a playwright, excuse me, you are a playwright who is writing about me, Cleopatra, putting imaginary flesh and blood on my dry bone frame. People will think of your literary travesty when they think of me. The definition of memory I take to be a hand reaching backwards and grasping a fistful of roses and thorns. I used to go down to the market in Alexandria. I would go there very early in the morning. I would disguise myself in nondescript clothes. A drop of blood dripping from a sunbeam, a question of fiction or of fact, a bubble that floats in the air or on the tide. Can you hear my voice? Am I getting through to you, or am I asking these questions in vain? I've always reached out to others. I've always sought allies. I've shared my agenda with some illustrious ones in the past. Couple your name with Cleopatra and you'll go far. So even though you don't acknowledge me, even if you cannot hear my voice, I will tell you what I am, what I used to be. Perhaps you will listen to what I have to say with your mind's ear. She's a most triumphant lady. I sit beside my brother. My brother sits beside me. My brother's advisors hold some documents for us to sign. We shall read them before we sign them, I say, as my brother pouts and sighs. Kindly wait in the outer chamber. My brother and I will make these decisions on our own. Well, that's chapter 1. If you think of an orchestra warming up, all kinds of notes, but none of them seem to make any sense. None of them seem to go together. None of them seem to belong in the same piece of music. So that's chapter 1. All these images, you could say floating around in Cleopatra's head. Well, that's fine, floating around, but kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. If all the pieces of puzzle are floating around, that's fine. But they're all looking for a way to join together in a way that will make sense. That's the point. It is my theory that that all human beings think, let me turn the page here, think on many levels of thought at the same time. So many levels of thought, that's what chapter 1 is, at the same time. There are an infinite number of these levels, an innumerable number of these levels, which range along what I would call the consciousness-subconsciousness continuum of thought, right? All the way from the most conscious thought to the most subconscious thought and everything in between. This means that we humans are always thinking at the level of the most heightened consciousness and at the level of the deepest subconsciousness and at many other levels of consciousness and subconsciousness in between. I would say that we are always thinking with more and less intensity of the most mundane everyday concerns and the most far-reaching concerns in terms of time, past, present, and future, and of cosmic significance. So we think about, where are my car keys, because I want to go get in the car and go down and buy a jug of milk. But we also think of how did the universe get here? How long will the universe last? Why did the dinosaurs disappear, right? Those are cosmic concerns. We're thinking of that all the time, though consciously we're not always aware of our subconscious thoughts. This means we have many layers of thought in our minds. I often think of the operations of a human mind as a cross-section of a cliff, which contains many layers of sediment from many centuries of pre-human and human occupation. Geologists and anthropologists tell us that these layers of sediment contain thousands, perhaps millions, of items of information about non-human and human activity on the earth. When we compare and contrast the information that each layer of the sediment of the cliff reveals, we are often amazed at how much thought this information generates about the nature of what it is to be human on this earth. So too with the human mind. Since almost the beginning of recorded time, human beings have developed art forms by which they can record their responses to the human experience of living on the earth. One of these art forms is the novel. At a certain point, the novel broke into two distinct forms, two forms of novel. Number one, the prose form of the novel, which concerns itself with the actions of humans here on earth and with the conscious thoughts of humans as they go about these actions. And number two, the poetic form of the novel, which uses the actions and the conscious thoughts of humans as they go about these actions as imagery in the mind of the main character. In addition to the conscious thoughts of the main character, the form of the poetic novel also includes the subconscious thoughts of the main character of the novel as well. It is the theory of the poetic novel that if you take a look at the layers of imagery in the mind of a human being at any given moment, there will be many layers of information which range from the most conscious thought to the least conscious thought, from the most prosaic thought to the most poetic thought. And at the deepest levels of subconscious thought, as we can see when we awaken in the middle of a dream, we humans think in the language of imagery. What the human mind is doing as it processes the information of so many levels of thought at any given moment is comparing and contrasting item of information to item of information, story to story, in order to generate potential meaning about the experience of living here on the earth. So what the poetic novel does is to present a number of layers of imagery, which I call image arcs. Say an arc goes through a curve, which are being considered by the mind at any given moment in the life of the main character. In chapter 1, it is the moment at which Cleopatra finds herself in a room with the playwright William Shakespeare. The various segments of imagery, which I call image units, are all being activated in the mind of Cleopatra in order to try to understand the significance of the situation in which she finds herself. What the poetic novel doesn't do is to provide an interpretation of the comparing and contrasting of the imagery, which is being presented as the text of the novel, as the imagery in the mind of the main character. The interpretation is left to the reader. That is what makes the poetic novel more of a challenge to read than a prose novel. It's also what makes the poetic novel a more rewarding reading experience than the reading of a prose novel. So, this is my novel, Shakespeare and Cleopatra, My Life Is Not My Own. It's found on Amazon where there's more information. It's found on my publisher's website, roxmillspress.com. More information there. On my website, there are 2 free books. The planning notebook that I wrote as I was planning on writing this novel, and the reflective journal that I wrote as I was polishing this novel. Just go to the cover icons, click on them, and you'll get each of those books to read for free. Lastly, I'll say thank you for watching this video presentation.